I was 7 years old. My older brother was 14. We were living in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and nothing dangerous ever really happened. Or at least, that's what I thought. That night, my brother was grounded. My dad had locked both the house phone and his cell phone inside his gun safe, a safe that neither of us knew the code to. My parents had left to check on my great-grandmother, who lived in a little house on my grandparents' property, just a short walk away. They told us they'd be back soon, and when they returned, we'd order pizza. To me, that sounded perfect. We played video games for a while, until hunger started to set in. But the longer we waited, the stranger it felt. 2 whole hours passed, and then we heard a knock, building tension, whisper, then louder. Excited, I ran downstairs, thinking it had to be food. But when I reached the front door, my heart dropped. Through the round window of the door stood a man, maybe 6'3", thin, with short black hair and a patchy, unshaven beard. He looked about 25, but I didn't recognize him, and in that town, that was unusual. I hesitated. Then, nervously, I lifted my finger, as if to say, just a second. I pulled the curtain shut over the window. When I turned around, my brother was there. His face was pale. He had seen the man too. That's when the knocking changed. And then, the doorknob rattled, violently. The entire door shook on its hinges. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just knocking, he was trying to come inside. With no phone, no way to call our parents. My brother grabbed my hand and pulled me into the kitchen. He yanked a knife from the drawer, but it snapped in his grip. He dropped it, cursing under his breath, and grabbed another one. We ran to the laundry room, crouching low, our hearts pounding. The sound of fists slamming against the door echoed through the house. Every second felt like an hour. And then, the front door opened. I held my breath, waiting for footsteps, waiting for that stranger to walk through the doorway. But instead, it was our mum. She stepped inside, holding 2 boxes of pizza. She froze when she saw us, huddled on the floor, crying. We tried to explain, both of us talking at once about the man at the door. She looked confused, even laughed a little. But then, she glanced outside, and there was my dad, standing in the driveway, talking to him. According to them, the man was just a mechanic. He claimed he'd noticed the old broken-down car sitting in our driveway for months, and wanted to buy it for parts. They said he felt bad for scaring us, that he was just impatient. Darker, reflective tone. But here's the part that still haunts me. Why would a grown man, a complete stranger, pound so violently on the door? Why would he rattle the handle, like he was desperate to force his way in? Why approach a house with no for sale sign on the car, at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, in a town where you know children might be home alone? That's not how adults behave. That's not normal. And even now, as an adult myself, I don't think I really want to know what would have happened if my parents hadn't come home. At that exact moment, times, the scariest monsters are the ones standing right outside your front door. I've had a handful of strange, unexplainable experiences in my life. Most of them were small, fleeting, shadows where there shouldn't be shadows, feelings of being watched when I was alone, whispers I could never quite make out. But there's one event that still haunts me to this day. It happened about 10 years ago, during the summer break after my sophomore year in college. I had come back home, to the house I grew up in, a modest 2-story place in a quiet Midwestern town. The house wasn't old, not in the centuries of history sense, but it did have a basement, and if you've ever lived in a house with one, you know how unsettling they can be. Cold, damp, too quiet. The kind of place you never went unless you had to. My parents mostly used it for storage, boxes of old clothes, holiday decorations, forgotten toys from my childhood. And then, shoved against the far wall, there was a tall antique mirror. The mirror had always been there, for as long as I could remember. My mum said she picked it up at an estate sale when I was little. It was heavy, framed in carved wood that had gone nearly black with age. It didn't really fit with anything else we owned, but somehow it stayed. Nobody ever used it, nobody ever moved it. It just sat there. I never thought much of it, until that summer. One evening, I was downstairs helping my dad sort through boxes. It was hot outside, but the basement was freezing, the kind of damp cold that clings to your bones. After a while, my dad went upstairs, leaving me to finish up. That's when I noticed the mirror. It was angled just enough that I could see myself while crouched over a box, but the reflection looked wrong at first. I thought it was just the dust or the warped glass, but as I stood up, I realized something chilling. My reflection wasn't moving in sync.
There was a leg. Just a fraction of a second, but enough to notice. I froze, staring. Slowly, I raised my hand. The reflection followed, but just a heartbeat too late. My skin prickled. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was just in my head, just my tired eyes playing tricks. But then, my reflection smiled. I hadn't. I remember backing away, my chest tight, heart pounding. I told myself it was impossible, but I swear, in that dim basement light, the reflection grinned at me, wide and unnatural, before falling perfectly still. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that smile in my head, the way its teeth looked too sharp, too long, like they didn't belong to me at all. The next day, I tried to avoid going downstairs. But late in the evening, I heard a noise from the basement. A scraping sound like wood dragging on concrete. My parents were asleep, so I grabbed a flashlight and crept down the stairs. Everything looked normal at first. Boxers stacked, tools hanging on the wall. But the mirror had moved. It was no longer against the far wall. It was now angled toward the bottom of the staircase, waiting for me. My blood ran cold. The beam of my flashlight hit the glass, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me in the reflection. Taller, darker, standing just over my shoulder. But when I spun around, no one was there. Over the next week, things escalated. I started dreaming about the mirror every night. In the dream, I would wake up in my own bed, walk down the stairs, and find myself standing in front of it. My reflection would always start out normal, and then slowly, the face would change. The eyes would sink into black hollows. The skin would stretch too thin. The grin would split impossibly wide. Sometimes, in the dream, the reflection would whisper. I could never understand the words, but I would wake up with the taste of blood in my mouth and the feeling of something cold pressed against my chest. And then, one night, I woke up, not in my bed, but on the basement floor. I don't know how I got there. My hands were scraped as if I'd crawled. My shirt was damp, and when I looked at the mirror, my reflection wasn't me. It was standing on the other side of the glass, its hands pressed flat against it, as if it was trying to push through. The grin stretched ear to ear, the teeth sharp, jagged, and its eyes were alive. A burning, hungry black. I stumbled backward, tripping over a box. For a moment, I thought it was going to step out of the mirror. The glass rippled like water, and then the basement light flicked on. It was my dad. He'd heard the noise. When I looked back, the reflection was normal again. Just me, pale and shaking. After that night, I refused to go down there alone. A few months later, while I was back at school, my mom decided to get rid of the mirror. She said, "It never felt right." Anyway, but sometimes, I wonder if it ever really left. Because every now and then, when I catch myself in a mirror too long, in a bathroom, a dressing room, even a passing reflection in a store window, I see it. Just for a split second! A lag in my movements. A grin that isn't mine. And I know it's still watching.
Late at night, when the world is quiet and most people are asleep, only a few remain awake. Truck drivers, night shift workers, and those who can't find peace. Ethan Miller was one of them. He hosted a small-town radio show called Voices After Midnight, the kind of show where lonely souls call in to share stories, request songs, or simply talk to someone who will listen. But on October 12th, something happened that no one could explain, something that would silence the station forever. At exactly 2:37 in the morning, the phone line blinked. Ethan answered, expecting another insomniac. Instead, a distorted whisper filled the studio. It said only, "Don't let her in. Don't let her in." And then the line went dead. Ethan forced a laugh, brushing it off as a prank, but his hands were trembling. There was something about the voice, something that didn't sound human. Minutes later, he heard the door handle to the studio jiggling softly. When he stepped out into the hallway, it was empty. The building was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. When he returned to his booth, the red on-air light flickered, and through his microphone, he heard them, voices, hundreds of them. Men, women, children, all whispering at once, their words overlapping like a swarm of insects. He checked the phone board. Every line was dead. Panicking, he tried to play music to cover the sound, but the track malfunctioned, looping the same words over and over. Let her in, let her in, let her in. The whispers grew louder. Some were laughing, others were crying, and then he heard one voice above the rest, a voice chanting his name, Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. His hands shook as he pulled the power cable from the console. The room went dark, but the voices did not stop. At 3 o'clock, the power returned on its own. The monitors glowed with static, and in that static, Ethan saw a reflection. A woman was standing behind him. Her skin was pale as paper. Her head tilted unnaturally. Her eyes were black, endless voids. She whispered in a voice that seemed to echo inside his skull. You heard me. Now you let me in. Ethan spun around, but the booth was empty. Only the glass walls remained, scratched deeply, as though fingernails had dragged across from the inside. Desperate, he called 911, but the voice that answered was his own. A recording of himself, saying the same words from earlier. Don't let her in. Don't let her in. Every phone in the studio began to ring at once. When Ethan answered one, he heard a scream. On another, more screams. Each line carried a different voice in agony. And then, cutting through them all, a calm whisper said, You can't keep her out. At 3:27, listeners at home began calling the police. They claimed the radio had changed, that Ethan was no longer speaking. Instead, they heard the sound of someone being dragged across the floor, fists pounding against glass, and then silence. When officers arrived, they found the booth empty. The chair was still warm. The microphone was still live, and the glass was smeared with long, deep scratches. Ethan Miller was never seen again. The station was shut down, abandoned, but locals still whisper about what happened that night. They say that if you tune your radio to the old frequency on October 12th, at exactly 3 in the morning, you'll hear him. His voice, calm and professional, as if nothing ever happened. This is Ethan Miller, and you're listening to Voices After Midnight. And if you keep listening long enough, another voice joins his. A woman's voice, whispering closer and closer, until it feels like she's right behind you. So, the next time you stumble upon a lonely frequency in the dead of night, remember this. Not every voice belongs to the living. And if one whispers to let her in,